In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a surreal portrait effect like this. We're going to be combining a portrait along with a load of these different pictures of wooden blocks. And we've cut these out for you, ready to use. So if you want to use your own portrait for this, you can copy these blocks in on top of it. And if you want to shoot something for this to fit in with the lighting that we used here, notice we shot our portrait here with the light coming in from the left of the camera with the window here. So this was just shot using simple window light with the light coming in from the left. And then our blocks were photographed under the same conditions. And shooting different elements under the same conditions like this just helps everything to fit together more naturally when we create our fantastical composite. So let's get started. I'm going to begin by opening up my portrait and the backdrop here. I'll just drag them both into Photoshop to open them. And then I'll go to this image here and I'll start off by cutting out the head and the arm. So I'll grab the quick selection brush from the tools panel over here and I'm just going to paint over the head here to select it. Make sure I include the hair as well. And also the arm here. And if we get any areas that we don't want, we can hold Alt and then paint to subtract them from the selection like this. So I'm just going to subtract the neck and any other little bits that we don't want. And once I've got a decent selection here, I can click Refine Edge to make it a lot better. So I could perhaps up the radius here, bring it to around about 4 pixels. And we could also paint around the hair to increase the area of refinement around here and try and pick up some of these strands of hair just by painting over the area with the Refine Radius tool. So I'll choose Output to New Layer here and then hit OK to apply. And then I can drag the cutout across to my clean background image. So I'm just going to grab the Move tool and notice I've got Show Transform Controls and Auto Select Layer checked up here. And this is really useful when making composites like this. It just gives us a bounding box around the layer and it allows us to click around the image to select different layers. So they're both really useful features to have turned on when you're making a composite with lots of different layers like this. So now I'll click and drag the head here up to the tab of the other image and then down and release to copy it over. And then I can position it wherever I choose. I could perhaps make it slightly larger if I like. Now at the moment the arm is looking a bit wonky. I'd like to make it look more upright to give the illusion of more of a freestanding structure here. So what I'll do is go to Edit, Puppet Warp. And then I can click pin. So I'm just going to click one pin on the forehead there, one on the wrist and one at the base of the arm here. And I'll drag that lower pin along like that to straighten out the arm and then hit enter to apply. I think perhaps we'll just make the layer slightly smaller as well. So that's my cutout prepared. Now we can start adding in our blocks. So let's go back into Bridge here. And as I say, we've got a selection of blocks here that we've already cut out. So they're all ready to be used in your own portraits. And I'm going to add in this one here. So I'll drag it into Photoshop to open it up. And it's a PNG file, which means it preserves transparency. So that gives us our cutout effect. And again, I'll just drag it up to the tab of my main image using the Move tool and down in and release to copy it over. And I'll position it roughly where I want it over the arm here like that. And perhaps just make it slightly smaller. Now I'd like to blend in the pixels on the portrait with the pixels on the block. And I can do that by using a couple of different layer techniques. So let's go to our layers panel by going to Window Layers. We'll bring that up. And first of all, let's go to the blend mode drop down at the top here and change the blend mode of that block layer. In fact, let's just rename the layer here. We'll call it Arm Blocks. And we'll call this layer Cutout. And we'll go to the arm block layer and change the blend mode here from normal to multiply. And notice how we start to get the effect that we're after, because by multiplying the pixels, we're allowing the darker pixels to be added to one another, which is giving us all these nice crevices and shadows in the blocks. But at the moment, it's not looking all that convincing, so we need to do a few more things to help blend it in. First of all, we can double click the layer here in the Layers panel to bring up the layer style options here. And in the top of the layer style options, we have the blending options. And the blend if options down here allow us to blend pixels on one layer with those below in different ways. If I drag the white point in, you can see we can start to knock out parts of the lighter pixels on our block layer. So we can start to remove some of the faces of the blocks or anywhere where lighter pixels show up. And this helps to reveal the detail and the texture of the skin on the layer below. Now, if we hold Alt and drag the different halves of these little slider here, we can split the slider up, and this creates a blend between these 2 points, which gives us more of a natural result. So we just need to experiment to find a point where we lose the surface of the blocks but still keep the dark shadows that we're after. And I think somewhere around about there is working quite nicely. Now we can also do the same on a different color channel here. If we go to the blend if drop down and select red, now our blocks are predominantly red in color, so by lowering again the lighter point and the red channel, we can again knock some more of those pixels out, and that gives us quite a nice result. Now we want to constrain the shape of the blocks to the cutout layer below, so I can hold Alt and click the line between the two layers to clip the block layer to the shape of the cutout so that only the areas that sit directly on top of that layer show through. And that's looking slightly neater around the top of the arm here, but around the bottom we still want to see some of those blocks because we want to give the illusion that it's a pile, and of course the base of the pile is important for creating that illusion. So to do this we need to create a copy of both of these layers here, so I'm going to Command or Control click on both layers there to highlight them, hit Command or Control and J, that's Command J on a Mac, Control J on a PC to create a copy, and I'm just going to drag those two copies down below my original layers there so they sit below them in the layers panel. And I'm also going to get rid of the settings that I've applied, so I'm going to again alt click to unclip that layer, and we'll just right click over the layer style options there and clear layer style to get rid of that blending effect. Next I'm going to hold Alt and click the Add Layer Mask icon here at the bottom of the Layers panel to add a full black mask to that lower block layer to completely hide it. And then I'm just going to reveal the areas that I want. So I'll grab the brush tool, I'll set my foreground color to white, I can use the left and right square bracket keys on my keyboard to resize the brush tip, and I'll just paint around here to reveal the blocks in this area like this. And if I go too far and add areas that I don't want, I can hit X to flip my foreground color to black and then just paint to blend in those edges like that. So that allows us to add in some of those blocks around the base. Now we need to add some skin texture over them. So what we'll do is highlight that lower cutout layer, grab the lasso tool, and I'm just going to make a rough selection of some of the nearby skin to the area that we want to cover up. So I'm just going to select this area here with the lasso tool, and I'll hit Command or Control and J to copy that area to a new layer, and then I'm going to drag that above the lower block layer that we just added that mask to. Then we can do sort of the opposite to what we did here. We can hold Alt and click the line between the two layers to create a clipping mask to clip that extra bit of skin to the block layer that reveals these areas around the edges here. Then we can grab the Move tool and we can click on the bounding box on that skin layer and just drag it across to cover up the extra parts of our block. Then all we need to do is change the blend mode here to multiply and just adjust the opacity here until it looks about right, so somewhere around about there I think. We might want to get rid of this hard line here, in which case we can just highlight our cutout layer here, add a mask to that layer, grab the brush tool, set our foreground color to black, and then just paint to blend in this area around here like this. We'll do the same over this half. So you can see now how that's starting to take shape. We can do the same over this area of the blocks here. So once again, I'll highlight that lower cutout copy layer, make a quick selection of some of the nearby surrounding skin, duplicate that with Command or Control and J, and then drag it above the block layer, and it'll automatically get added into that clipping group. Then I can grab the Move tool, click on the bounding box, and reposition it over the area that I want. And then once more, change the blend mode to multiply, adjust the layer opacity slightly, and we're going to need to add a mask. The reason why these bits are showing up is because we can see the shadow on that block layer, so I just need to add a mask to confine the edges here, just to tidy up these little edges around here. So this is all about just working around the image, adding masks where you need them to reveal or hide parts of your layers until everything kind of fits together nicely like this. And if we go up a little bit further, there's a little section of the arm here that I'd quite like to remove. So I need to knock out that little section there on the cutout layer here. But if we just hide that, I also need to just get rid of the areas on the cutout copy layer here. So I'm just going to highlight that first of all, zoom out slightly, and I'm just going to add a layer mask and paint over the top half of the image here just to hide the head, just so we're only really needing to use the section down here at the base. And then with that done, I can go back to the other cutout layer, zoom into that little section, and now I'll be able to remove it using the brush tool and painting on the layer mask there. So I'm just going to paint black around this area here. And I'll need to be quite precise with my painting. I can hold shift and click between one point and another to draw a straight line between them, which is really useful when trying to paint precisely around straight edged blocks like this. And then I can just finish off and get rid of the rest of the section like that. So that just helps to add a bit of interest around these areas and make the whole thing look a little bit more realistic. And we can then go on to add other block layers in exactly the same way. So we could add a section of blocks to the face here. First of all, actually, we may need to just hide this part of that block layer just so that we can constrain the blocks here to the shape of the arm. So I'll highlight that top block layer, add another layer mask, grab the brush tool, and again I can paint with black just to hide that area. So a lot of this is just about identifying the layers that are showing up and where you want to reveal or hide them, and then adding layer masks and painting where you need to. Now let's go back into Bridge here and we'll try another layer. So I'm just going to open up this cutout here. So again, I'll just drag it into Photoshop, grab the Move tool, copy it over to our main image, position it wherever we like. And again, we'll change the blend mode here to multiply. We can copy that same layer style over. So I'll right click over the little square icon here on that layer and choose copy layer style. I'll go to that other block layer and paste layer style. And then I'll hold Alt and click the line here to add that into the clipping group. And it gives us that kind of effect. Now it's still looking quite dark, so we may just need to lighten this layer slightly. So I can hit Command or Control and L for levels, and then I'll just lift that layer until it looks bright like that. And again, I'll add a layer mask and paint to hide the areas that I don't want around here. So now our effect is starting to take shape, and we can add further cutout block layers in exactly the same way. So let's perhaps add one more to the top of the head. So I'll go back into Bridge. Let's have a look through. We'll perhaps open up this one here. So again, just drag it into Photoshop, use the Move tool to copy it over, position it where we want it, and once more we can change the blend mode, clip it to the rest, paste the layer style over, and then if we need to, adjust the levels. And finally, add a layer mask to that top layer. So you can see how once we get started, it's actually easier than it might look to build up the effect. And of course, I'm doing this fairly quickly, but you might want to spend a bit more time just fine-tuning things. I'm just going to add one more layer here for this section of the hand. So let's go back into Bridge and we'll open up this one here maybe. Drag it in. Position it. Clip it with the other layers. Change the blend mode here to multiply and paste the layer style. And then of course just go in and fine tune the area using layer masks. So I just need to paint over this section here to tidy up and around these parts here. And now I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. So I'm just going to zoom out slightly. And I'll finish off by adding a tonal effect on top of everything. So I'll hit Command or Control, Shift, Alt and E, and that will merge a copy of all of the layers here. And I'm just going to go to the Camera Raw filter to apply my tonal changes. You need Photoshop CC to use the Camera Raw filter. If you don't have CC, you can always just go ahead and make tonal adjustments in any other way you like, perhaps by using adjustment layers. But I'm going to use the Camera Raw filter. So I'll go to Filter, Camera Raw filter, and I'd like to increase the clarity. Let's perhaps up the shadows a little bit. Let's lower the highlights a touch. We can add a vignette using the radial filter. I can just grab that, lower the exposure slightly, and then hold Command or Control and double click to add a darkening effect to the edges of the frame here. Let's perhaps tweak the temperature as well to cool things down a touch, and then we can go in perhaps with the adjustment brush, dial in some positive exposure and just paint to lift any areas that we want, like this. And then hit OK to apply. And